So if I'm looking at this, and I'm going to copy this but in watercolor, I'm going to start with just very light general outlines. And I'm not, remember I said we're not concerned about making it exactly what's on the page. This is our inspiration, but we're not like super tied to it because we want to have interesting, colorful things. And look, here are roofs. There we go. I don't even need to do that much because that's more than I want in here. There's the orange, the green kind of comes down, this green comes down, there's a lighter one even closer. I know these are moving closer because they're moving down the page. So I'm working to show depth, so things higher on the page go back in space. I'm not going to put anything in the sky because it would be transparent. So let's see, so that's enough. Light, general shapes and forms, just outlines. That's all you're going to start with because we're going to add, this is too big, we're going to add stuff later. That. We're going to add the details later. So, which would be our first, one of our rules. General to specific. Very general. Okay. So now I'm going to take, and I filled this with water because I want a good amount of water in there. I'm going to wet all of my colors to start. Oh, barely have blue. Because I want them to sort of soften, and then I can work with them. Now the white in my picture is going to be the white of the page. So I'm going to start, my next rule is, what's the rule that always wins? Light to dark. Thank you for all yelling at that. That's good. That's good. Light to dark, so my whites are the white of the page. So I'm going to start with a wash. So I want to think about the techniques I'm using here too. And I know that I'm going to have a wash here. This is my lightest. And then I go to, what was my second rule? Just yell out. Back to front. Good. So this is back and it's light. Then I have some light yellows and things and kind of move through this way. These are my darks I'll do last. I want to have this color ready. So I'm going to take some blue, put it in here. I'm going to make it sort of a purplish. That's a lot of purple, not that much purple. Can you guys see? Maybe I'll move this here. There we go. Oh, this nice blue sky. Because I don't care exactly, right? Put some purple over there maybe. I want it to be inspired by this, but not exactly like this. So I'm going to take my nice big brush, get it just water, and your canvases are stretched, so this will not crumple on you like mine's gonna do. And I don't really care about these edges so much right now. If, well maybe I do, if I kind of take this and go and define that edge, the advantage of that is that I will blend and get that nice wet into wet. Remember the wet into wet technique? So the wash means I've wet the paper first, and then wet into wet is where I have a color down, and then the next color just sort of blends with it. So now I have these sweeping clouds across the sky, so I'm going to put some blue on there. I want a good amount of color on my brush to get some color. And then I'm going to sweep. Oh, it's nice to sweep. Like so, and I'm going back to front, so if I mess this up, like I kind of just did because I made it like all blue, I didn't want it all blue, then it's okay. But I still, ooh, I can do things. I have my watercolor box of fun, right? What do we call it? Box of tricks, box of fun. So maybe now I come back with something like this, and I take some out. Yep, this is the watercolor paper that needs to be stretched. It just kind of soaks things up. So I can do things like I can scrub some color out of it. I didn't stretch this, and it just sort of sucks it in. Yep, this is the stuff I don't like. That's what you get for choosing a random piece. Usually stretched again, so it won't have this. But I do want to get a little bit lighter value in here. So I can do things like this. I can lift things out. I can let that blend, and then I have those things across the sky. Now, then I come down here, and I have these little buildings here, and I'm going to use my little brush to put in some of those lighter, warmer values. And I want them to be this orangey, but it's kind of a dull orangey. And again, I know there's little things there, but I'm not, there we go. I'm not like super set on all that's there. I can very gesturally, this is a gestural landscape. Here's some roofs, here's a roof, here's one here. There we go. And I'm trying to keep my mark consistent here. Here I see a little more of a house, so maybe there's one more, there's a little more detail. He's in front, so he's got more detail. This is a roof, here you go. But I'm playing. Remember we played and how much fun we had with our colors last week? Oh, it was so nice. We played, and we had fun. Here's some rooftops. Here's a roof over here. This one's a little darker. Maybe I'll make it a little darker. So I'm inspired by this, but I'm not like, I don't have to do exactly what's there. There we go. Lovely. Now this same color, look, it's right there too. Same color. Oh, good. And it's far away, so it's not bright. Remember, things that are farther away from us, remember our color theory, are going to be a little bit more dull. Here's the orange that's back there. Maybe I'll just start with kind of make it more like a wash. Wet it first and let the orange fill that. So I'm going to let the light get in there. And granted, it's a darker color back there. Let's move this closer so you guys can see. It's a darker color. It's a little brighter. It can be slightly brighter because it's closer to me. Ooh. Things will brighten up as they get closer. They'll dull in intensity as they get further away. They tend to get lighter with the atmosphere too. But it's not really just one, like lighter or darker. They have less contrast is really what happens. So like the things closer to you will have black and white in them, or lights and darks, and the things further away tend to be more the same. All right. And then it's, there's some really dull colors in here. So I'm going to take some of my blue and get maybe some of these little darker things in here and get some of that. So I remember that those are there. So I'm kind of working around. Now I look over here. I got some of this orange over here, but it's in these little spots. So maybe I'll take let me use this brush. I kind of contaminated that, didn't I? Just a little bit. So I take some of this. But there's orange down here, and I make some orange down there. That's probably too much, but I'm not so concerned. It's okay. And there's a lot of yellow in there. And that's one of the reasons I like this picture, because I really like bright sunny yellow. So I might take this. Too much. Look how dark that is. So I'm working kind of quickly with this, right? I'm going to wet this all so I can make this a wash. Blend that in with that edge. So sometimes as you're wetting, now, this is lighter. That's pretty bright because it's toward the front, so I can add some of these brighter colors in here. And here I'm not as concerned about the color because this is going to be dark green. Like that's going to get totally covered up. And all these little contrasts in here, these little darker pieces, I'm going to go in and add those later. So right now, I want the oranges and yellows to blend and mix. And look, here's some bright yellow. I put that there. Here's a bright yellow. Am I being really exact? Am I? No. I'm being very loose on the general. I want to fill it with a color so it doesn't look like I forgot that part. There we go. This is my field. This will have more detail because it's closer, right? Now this, because it's back in space, has this sort of darker atmospheric thing going on. Pretty dull. So maybe now I come in, and I want it to be very light. So I'm going to put some of that value in, but not details yet. Yeah?
That's good.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I put that big calendar on the very bottom in the kiln?
Yeah, I think so. If we can fit that woman, if we need to fill up space, she can go in.
Oh, the real big one?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that I'll be able to fit it all.
Oh, awesome. All right, cool. So then I'll go in and I'll add more details there. Ooh, this was bright. So maybe I come in and I say, I want to go back and add some bright. Maybe I want some lighter spots in here, and I can pull those out. All right, now I have the darks coming in. So I'm starting to get some mediums. This is really dark in here, and this is much more greenish, right? But it's a dull green. That's not a very bright green. So this would be like candy, right? I can add some because that's fun. I'm playing, remember? But I don't want it to be too bright. So what's the complement of green? Red. Oh, why is it 3 voices green? So to dull it, I'm going to add a little bit of green. I might add a little purple. Sure, I don't know. Mix it up. Try something fun. There we go. That's oh, isn't that? I don't know. That might be more than I want, but that's okay. All right, now I want this to blend, so I'm going to do not too much. I'm going to wet it, but I don't care that there's green on my brush already because it's all going to be green. So maybe I'll do some wet into wet like this. And nice, it's kind of nice because even though this is a solid thing, I can kind of fix that edge and get a clean edge there. That is really dark, isn't it? No, that's okay then. I can put lots of these and they will blend. And I start to move this in here. And I had a professor that used to say it's a gray, gray world because he would mix almost everything with its complement. Which, you know, nothing should be just the color in itself. You should always mix these because unless you live in a Skittle colored world. But this is looking like I'm drawing a tree, right? And I wanted to think creatively, not like I'm drawing a specific object. So maybe I come over here and say, you know what, I bet there is red over here because that's the complement, and I put some red in there. Because I'm using wet into wet, it will just sort of blend in there. Maybe I put some here and some here, and I let that red show it through because, I don't know, I'm having fun. Okay, great, good idea. Maybe now I take some blue and say, I don't know, maybe there's some blue in the shadows because I'm having fun. Voila! Now I will let this dry because I want to keep that edge, and I will go over and maybe I'll do this guy. Now this guy, oh look, he's getting more light. So he's got more greenish yellowish in there. So I can take some of this, get some yellow on my brush, and maybe I'll come over here. And he's got, but you know, he should match. He should have some of this yellow too, yellow and green too. There we go, because they're friends, right? The trees, they live together. I hope they're friends, otherwise it's a long life living together, right? For the trees. Do you ever imagine as a kid that things talk to each other? Like trees and, well, stuffed animals, really. I was convinced my stuffed animals talked to each other when I was gone. And the Toy Story movie wasn't even out yet. Did anybody else believe their stuffed animals talked to each other when you weren't around? See, I'm not alone. The rest of you felt that too. Don't just, you're sitting there like, this Rose is weird. You know you did. You know you did. Right? You believed in things like that. You know, it would be fun. They all had relationships, my stuffed animals. They were all brothers. Like if I get a new one, I'm like, oh, it's his long lost cousin. They're all part of one big happy family. So now I'm like, oh, but look, there's this green over here. Because remember, I wanted to work it up as a whole. I was getting general to specific. Oh, there's greens over here. So I'll put these here. I can define these edges because that's starting to dry now. And then maybe I get, oh, red. I would like to play with the red again. I put some red in here. And there we go. So I start to kind of build up this layer with wet into wet. And then, after I do that, oh, look, I have a giant one that I've played with too. And then maybe I go over here, and this is bigger, so I've kind of gone back over it as it's dried and add some things like this. I've had more details here because it's big. This is just play. I just got a lot of colors here with play. And while this was wet, I spattered. Oh, I could do that on here. I'll spatter. We'll spatter. Now, because I don't want the spatter to be everywhere, I want to be careful how I spatter. So I could take something, maybe I'll take my watercolor notes that I'm not really saying to you as we're working, and I could, oh, I don't want it on this one though. No. I could go like this and just tap gently and get some of those darks in there so I can play with my spattering technique. So I've had wet into wet. I've had some where I pulled the colors out after. Now there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of dark on there. So maybe I do some of this. Maybe I want some purple, because purple is the complement of yellow, right? So maybe I'll mix some green and purple and do some of these. I think it would have been cooler had I left it a little wet. I like that better than just plain dots. But no, it's okay, because I'm playing. I'm not so concerned. And I don't care that it's not exact. I'm just playing. You could also, when you put these down, this would be a good one for the salt technique. Get that little texture in there. How about that? How about the salt? You guys are asleep today. All right, I have this. That's not bad. Kind of making a mess. Am I getting anybody else wet? I hope not. That off-white sweater that I wore the day I showed you all the different techniques. Did anybody notice the orange splatters I had all over it when I left and showed you? I got home, I was like, what? Oh. So maybe I want some darker ones. Maybe, because it does get kind of dark. Maybe, because see, there are like plants in there. I'll turn it upside down so I can see. So I want to like highlight different spots, towards the front mostly. But see now I'm like, it's like I'm cutting out the dark. And I want to leave like air and room for it to move. Because there's like, this is dark here, and this is dark here. So I'm putting those in, because you put those in later, right? And there's some bright spots. Now it's getting a little less. I need some more paint on my brush to carve in those dark things, because it's getting like gray instead. So now I want maybe some brighter things. So I can go a little more opaque. Oh, but my yellow, this is yellow, I know my colors, is messed up. See, you just clean it. Look at that. You never have to worry, you don't have to go through all the paints to choose the best tray, because you can clean up any tray if you know how, just like that. See, super easy. So there we go. I cleaned up my yellow. I want the touch of orange in there. And I'm going to get some of these lighter leaves down there. Oh, is it that? Look at that. Easy one. Did you hear the noise my brush made? That was weird. I don't know why those noises come out. But see, I can add plants. But am I drawing leaves? Oh, I'm just playing. I'm just playing with the brush stroke. Kind of like when we did the master copies with the Impressionist pieces. We used their brush stroke as inspiration, right? So we're using a brush stroke here as inspiration. Oh, is it? Oh, wait, they're all the same height. That's not good. You gotta vary them. They don't look natural then. And then here, maybe I need some more brighter orange here. Oh, too bright. And I go here. And then playing. I like doing things like this upside down every now and then, just because then I'm not so concerned if it's exact. I'm kind of just getting it to go in there. And then these flowers might ease into there, and I just, okay, here's some more, and let's go here. So if I look at this, you get the impression of like space and land and flowers and plants, right? Did you see me draw any space, land, flowers, or plants? No, I made a lot of blobs because I'm working on a gestural painting and I would continue to build up. I would have done more of these, but I wanted you to see some different techniques and things there. So I have wash. I don't love this guy. I'll probably go back in and just make it darker. Now I need to go back in here with some dry brush. Not too much because this is in the distance, so I don't want to have the details too tight there. Maybe go back in here when it's done with some dry brush to pull this forward. Dry brush means what? What's dry? You'd think it's the brush, but it's not the brush, it's the paper. I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me, but it is. It's called dry brush. You should know what people call it. So dry brush is really dry paper so that I can get more exact details. And that's how I got these edges on my trees. So I'd have dry brush, I have spattering, I could do salt in here, but think about the techniques and how you could get it to let you play. Have fun. You're not the slave to the picture. Have fun. Are we good? Yeah. Thank you, go. How much time we got? 15 minutes.